The text came while I was folding scarves in my boutique. I am divorcing you. The joint account is empty. Do not call me. I am leaving for Miami with Melissa. For a moment, I just stared. 12 years of marriage, erased in 3 lines. But I did not scream. I did not collapse on the floor. The only sign that my world had just been shattered was the way my hands tightened around the ribbon I was tying. My name is Claire. I am 38 years old, and I just received the most heartless goodbye any wife could imagine. My husband believed he had won, that I would be broken, helpless, humiliated. He thought emptying our savings and running off with his 20-year-old girlfriend meant the end of my story. What he did not know was that while he was planning his escape, I was planning something of my own. Every late night, every missing deposit, every suspicious receipt, those had not gone unnoticed. I had been watching, waiting, preparing, and when the moment came, I was not going to cry. I was not going to beg. I was going to make sure the man who thought he had destroyed me would discover just how dangerous it is to underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. Because if he thought Miami was the start of his new life, he had no idea what was really coming. When people looked at my life from the outside, they thought I had it all. A loving husband, a stable marriage, a small but thriving boutique, and a daughter who was the center of my world. They saw the smiles in family photos, the holiday gatherings, the hand-in-hand appearances at parties. What they did not see were the cracks, tiny at first, but spreading quietly like hairline fractures in glass. I built my boutique from scratch. While Mark was climbing the ladder at his company, I was pouring every ounce of energy into late nights. Careful savings and endless sacrifice. He liked to call it my little shop, dismissing it as a hobby. But that little shop paid our bills more than once when his so-called promotions were delayed, or when his investments mysteriously collapsed. I did not complain. I worked harder. I carried us both, without ever asking for gratitude. For years, I convinced myself that his distance was stress, that his sudden obsession with the gym, his new cologne, and his late nights at the office were simply part of a man trying to cope with middle age. But deep down I felt it, the shift. The way he stopped looking at me, the way his laughter rang louder around other women, the way his phone was always face down on the table. I wanted to believe I was imagining it. I told myself, all marriages go through phases, that patience was strength. But strength without respect is weakness, and patience without honesty is wasted time. So while Mark thought I was busy counting sales at my boutique, I was quietly counting something else, every red flag, every receipt, every lie that would one day reveal the man he truly was. And when that day arrived, I was not going to be unprepared. The day had started like any other. Morning light streamed through the tall windows of my boutique, catching the glitter of jewelry displays and the soft folds of silk scarves. The scent of lavender polish lingered in the air from last night's cleaning. Customers came and went, their chatter and laughter filling the quiet spaces between the soft hum of the air conditioner. I had built this place to be a sanctuary. Every corner reflected years of careful choices, hand-picked fabrics, polished mirrors, warm lighting that made even the most hesitant shopper feel beautiful. It was not just a shop. It was my pride, my proof that sacrifice bore fruit. But even in this haven, shadows crept in. I noticed them in the smallest moments, when my phone buzzed with a message and my stomach twisted before I even looked. When Mark forgot to answer my calls during late nights, when he brushed off family dinners, with excuses that grew thinner by the week. On the surface, life moved forward. Amelia was preparing for her graduation. The boutique had just hit record sales, and friends congratulated me on how lucky I was. They did not see me staring too long at empty chairs at the table. They did not hear the silence in our house after Mark stormed in past midnight, showered, and turned away from me in bed. I told myself to wait, to let him come back to me. But deep down, I was already bracing for the moment when pretending would no longer be possible. And as I wrapped a scarf in our silver paper for Mrs. Peterson that afternoon, I did not yet know that moment was already here, sliding across my phone screen, in the form of a text that would rip our lives apart. The phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen, expecting another order confirmation or supplier update. Instead, my eyes froze on Mark's name. The message was short, sharp, and final. I am divorcing you. The joint account is empty. Do not call me. Melissa and I are leaving for Miami. For a moment, time stalled. The hum of the air conditioner faded. The world outside blurred, and I stood rooted to the spot. My hands did not shake. My breath did not catch. The only sign that my marriage of 12 years had just imploded was the tightening of my jaw. As I finished wrapping Mrs. Peterson's scarf, "Thank you, dear. You always make things look so special," she said warmly. I smiled politely, slid the package into her hands, and held the door open. Only when she was gone did I allow my eyes to return to the screen. Another buzz. Do not bother begging. Melissa understands me in ways you never could. I will send for my things later, Melissa. The receptionist from his office. The one who had laughed too loudly at his jokes during the Christmas party. Her manicured hand brushing his arm just a moment too long. I let out a bitter laugh. At least he had confirmed what I already suspected. My phone buzzed again. I know this must be hard for you. But you will be fine. You have your little shop to keep you busy. At least it gives you something. My little shop. The same boutique I had built from nothing. The same business that generated more income than his mid-level job. To him, it was just a hobby. A consolation prize. I scrolled up, reading the messages again. Each word like a blade. There was no apology, no shame. Only arrogance, cruelty, and the smug certainty that he had won. Another message. By the way, I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift. 3 letters that turned my stomach more than the rest combined. It was not just betrayal, it was mockery. I placed the phone on the counter and stared at the rows of handbags lined neatly on the shelf. 12 years of loyalty, sacrifice, and silence, discarded with the same casual cruelty as a worn-out shirt. But as the weight of his words pressed down, something unexpected rose inside me. Not panic, not despair. A strange, steady calm, because while Mark thought he was clever, thought he had left me with nothing, he had no idea what I had been doing these past few months. The late nights were not only his. The records I kept were not only for taxes. The account I had quietly opened in my name was not for emergencies. It was for this moment. He believed he had ended my story with a text message. But what he did not know was that it was only the beginning. The hours after his texts passed in a blur. I kept moving through the motions, greeting customers, wrapping packages, arranging displays, but behind my calm smile, his words echoed like a drumbeat. Your little shop. Melissa understands me, LOL, by evening. The whispers had begun. A friend from church called, her voice tight with pity. Claire, I do not know how to say this, but Mark posted a photo. He and Melissa at the airport. I opened social media. There it was. Mark with his arm draped around her shoulders, both of them grinning like teenagers. The caption, New Beginnings. Miami, here we come. The comments flooded in. So happy for you, Mark. Wishing you both the best. None of them spared a thought for the woman he had just blindsided. By the next morning, it was not just friends, it was family. His sister left me a voicemail, her tone dripping with accusation. Claire, I cannot believe you pushed him this far. He told us you were controlling, cold, always nagging. No wonder he left. Controlling, cold, nagging. Words he had repeated often enough to make me wonder if they were true. Now he was spreading them like poison, rewriting our marriage as if I had been the problem all along. At the boutique, I noticed the stares. Customers lingered a little longer, whispering behind scarves they pretended to examine. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with barely hidden judgment. I had become a story, a wife abandoned by her husband for someone half her age. But through it all, I remained calm. I did not deny. I did not explain. I let the whispers circle like vultures, while I quietly filed away each piece of his arrogance. Every text, every receipt, every careless social media post, the humiliation burned, yes. Each laugh at my expense was like salt rubbed into an open wound. But humiliation has a way of stripping everything unnecessary. I could see clearly now. Mark thought this was the end of me, that I would crumble, cry, maybe even beg. But instead, every whisper, every smirk, every cruel message only sharpened something inside me. Because revenge is not born in the moment of betrayal. It grows in the silence afterward, when you realize that being underestimated is the greatest weapon you will ever have. That night, after closing the boutique, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by silence. The house, once filled with arguments over bills and half-hearted apologies, now felt like a museum of lies. Mark's presence still lingered in every corner, the coffee mug he had left in the sink, the jacket hanging carelessly on the chair. But I did not touch them. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out the folder I had started months ago. Receipts, bank statements, screenshots of hotel charges, even printouts of his sudden credit card splurges. At the time, I had not known what I would do with them, only that I could not let his secrecy go undocumented. Now, looking at the stack, I realized I had been preparing for this moment all along. I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I already had a private savings account, one he knew nothing about. Every time I had a good sales week at the boutique, I tucked a little extra there. Not much at once, but steady enough that now, while he was posting photos at the airport, I was staring at a balance that gave me options. The texts from him kept coming. Each one more arrogant than the last. Melissa makes me feel alive. You never understood me. You will survive. You always have your little shop. Do not make this harder than it has to be. I screenshotted them all, carefully adding them to a digital folder. Evidence, proof of his intent. His cruelty, his theft. He thought those words were daggers meant for me. What he did not realize was that each one was a nail in his own coffin. 2 months ago, when I had found a hotel receipt in his jacket, I had quietly met with a lawyer. At the time, I was not ready to act. But now, I dialed her number. It is time, I said simply. Her calm voice on the other end was reassuring. Good. You have done the hard part already. I will prepare the filings. We will make sure he does not get away with this. I ended the call and felt the strangest sense of peace wash over me. For the first time in years, I was not reacting to Mark. I was leading. He believed he had stripped me bare. But he had not taken my strength, my intelligence, or the foresight that had quietly been protecting me all along. Mark thought his betrayal was the final move. But he was about to learn that I had been playing a much longer game. A week into my quiet preparations, the first crack in my mask appeared. I had just finished printing out a batch of bank statements when Amelia, my daughter, walked into the study unannounced. She picked up one of the pages I had not yet tucked into the folder. Her brow furrowed as she scanned the numbers. Mom, why do you have all of Dad's accounts here? Are you spying on him? Her voice trembled, a mixture of confusion and fear. For a heartbeat, my chest tightened. If she confronted him, if she let slip that I was watching, everything I had built would collapse before it even began. My silence, my advantage, it would all be gone. I forced my voice steady. Sweetheart, sometimes the truth hides in plain sight. And sometimes, to protect the people we love, we have to be brave enough to look for it. She hesitated, the paper still in her hands. The seconds stretched, my pulse pounding in my ears. Finally, she set it down, nodding slowly, though her eyes still held questions. That night, I hid the folder in a safer place. But the fear lingered. If Amelia could stumble across my plan, so could Mark, or worse, Melissa. And if they realized I was not broken but preparing, the game would end before it truly began. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere, sterile, sharp, unforgiving. The kind of place where truth cut through lies like glass. Mark swaggered in, wearing a blazer that tried too hard. His new girlfriend Melissa trailing behind in a bright red dress. They looked smug, like royalty stepping onto a stage they thought was theirs. I sat at my lawyer's side, calm, my documents neatly stacked. My heart thudded, but my face betrayed nothing. I had learned long ago that silence could be the sharpest weapon. When the judge called our case, Mark's lawyer jumped first, painting me as bitter, controlling, vindictive. "She is punishing him," he declared. "She is trying to ruin his fresh start." My lawyer rose slowly. "Deliberate, every move precise. Punishing? No, Your Honor. Protecting." She laid the first set of papers on the desk. "Here are text messages from Mr. Harrison himself, admitting to emptying the joint account, mocking my client's age, and using their shared credit cards to fund a trip with his girlfriend." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Do you deny this, Mr. Harrison?" Mark's confidence faltered. But he forced a laugh. "I was just joking. Everyone texts like that. It was not serious." My lawyer did not flinch. She pulled another folder. "Here are bank records. Receipts for hotels and restaurants where Mr. Harrison claimed to be working late. Here is the joint account history, drained days before his departure. And here," she held up a printed screenshot, "is his gleeful post about his trip to Miami, captioned New Beginnings." The room stirred with whispers. Melissa shifted in her seat, her face paling under the fluorescent lights. The judge's voice cut through. "So you admit you took funds from the joint account and used shared credit for personal travel?" Mark stammered, his cocky facade crumbling. I just wanted a clean break." "A clean break," the judge repeated, "does not include financial fraud." Every word was another stone on his chest. I sat still, watching, not needing to speak. He had written his downfall himself, line by arrogant line. In every text, every receipt. Melissa leaned toward him, whispering sharply. He pulled back, embarrassed. The red dress that once screamed victory now looked like desperation. The judge flipped through the documents one final time before speaking. "Given the evidence of misconduct, the court freezes all remaining joint assets immediately. Mr. Harrison, you are ordered to return funds withdrawn from joint accounts within 24 hours. Additionally, all property listed under Mrs. Harrison's name remains solely hers. The boutique, her inheritance, and all separate accounts are untouchable." Mark's lawyer tried to object, but the judge's gavel cut him off. "Enough. This case is clear." The sound echoed like thunder. Mark's face drained, his mouth opening and closing like a man drowning, with no words left to save him. Melissa sat rigid, eyes darting toward the door, as if calculating her escape. When the session ended, I rose slowly. My heels clicked against the polished marble floor. Each step measured, deliberate. Behind me, I could hear Melissa's voice, sharp with frustration. "You did not tell me it was this bad. You said you had everything under control." Mark's reply was muffled. Desperate, I did not need to hear the words. His story was collapsing. Outside the courthouse, the sun felt warm on my skin. Brighter than it had in weeks. For the first time in a long time, I breathed freely. Mark had tried to humiliate me with a text message. But here, in front of the judge, in front of his girlfriend, in front of everyone, he had humiliated himself. The days following the hearing unfolded like the slow collapse of a house built on lies. Mark had strutted into that courtroom believing he would walk out triumphant. But instead, he walked out stripped of money, of dignity, and of the illusion that he still controlled the narrative. The very next morning, his texts shifted tone. Gone were the cruel, mocking jabs. Now they dripped with desperation. "Claire, can we talk? Maybe we can work this out. You do not have to be so harsh." Another followed. "Melissa left me. She says I ruined her life. I just need a little help getting back on my feet." I did not reply. Each buzz of my phone only reminded me. That silence was its own form of justice. Word spread quickly. His family, who had once whispered about me being controlling and cold, now saw the truth in black and white. His own words, his own arrogance. His sister called, her voice subdued. "Claire, we are sorry. We did not know. He made you the villain. We believed him. But now," her voice cracked, "now we see who he really is." By then, Mark was back in his childhood bedroom at his mother's house, the same man who had mocked my age and my little shop. Now jobless, girlfriendless, and broke. Even his company, embarrassed by the scandal, quietly pushed him out of his position. And me? I walked into my boutique with my head high, greeted by customers who smiled a little differently now, not with pity, but with admiration. My business had survived the storm, and so had I. Mark had tried to destroy me with a single message. Instead, he had destroyed himself. And the best part? He had handed me every tool to do it. When I think back to that moment, the text message that ended my marriage in 3 cruel lines, I realized something important. Mark thought he had written my ending, but what he really did was hand me the pen to write a stronger beginning. Betrayal hurts in ways words cannot describe. It strips you bare, makes you question your worth, and tempts you to believe the lies spoken about you. But betrayal also does something else. It clears away illusions. It forces you to see the truth of people, and more importantly, the truth of yourself. I had spent years doubting, sacrificing, bending myself smaller so he could feel bigger. And yet, when he tried to break me, I discovered the one thing he had never counted on. I was stronger without him than I had ever been beside him. So yes, my husband divorced me by text and emptied our joint account. He thought it was the cruelest goodbye in history, but he had no idea that I was already prepared, already watching, already stronger than his lies. And the lesson? Sometimes, the worst endings are really the best beginnings. What about you? If someone you trusted betrayed you so cruelly, ending your marriage with a text and stealing your savings, would you have fought back like I did? Or walked away in silence? I would love to hear your thoughts. Share your story in the comments. I read every single one, and if this story moved you, do not forget to subscribe. More tales of betrayal, strength, and justice are coming, each one proving that silence can be broken. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply rising stronger.